How about if I just start at the beginning? you could be honest.
Because you know what? They have the sweat equity that went into that memory that they're making with their friends and family. And that's what's important with us. And that's what the I Am Real World's about.
Well, that's a great question. You know, one of the best things about a spring food plot is you get a second chance if it fails.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins. Brought to you by buyafarm.com, your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. By tapping into Don's years of experience, dedication, and commitment, Chasing Giants focuses on the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails. Now, here is Don and co-host Terry Peer.
It's deer season, everybody. Welcome to Chasing Giants, episode 81. We got the Kentucky opener already gone and only 3.5 weeks away from Illinois' opener. Don, it's finally deer season, buddy.
It is for you, not quite for me, but it won't be long.
You're awful close. It's September 5th tonight. We got a busy show as we got a special guest that's going to be coming up here in just a little bit, but marking down that there's already been some big velvet bucks that I've seen on Facebook killed this weekend.
Yeah, I've seen that. There usually is, and I'm not a bit surprised. Kentucky turns out some giants.
Yeah, that's right. So, we kind of teased a little bit that I'd be hunting all weekend, and right now it's 8 o'clock Eastern time. We're probably about 45, 50 minutes from last light. And I'm sitting here recording a podcast instead of sitting in a tree.
Yeah, there's got to be a story behind that because I know you're not hurt. You're able to be out there, but you probably ought to tell us why you're not.
Well, I got to thinking this week, and the bottom line is that, I have a bachelor group on my place this year, and there's 2 deer I know that are over 5 years old. We got history with them. But I just don't have a deer that I think will go past low 150s. And he's just not what I want to shoot. And to be quite honest with everybody, through my hunting career, I would feel the pressure, whether I was in the outdoor industry or in the public eye back years ago and having to get footage or maybe affiliated with somebody where I needed to get content. I'm not at the point anymore where I need to shoot a buck that I'm really not interested in for the sake of shooting it. And those bucks that are on my place right now will mean a whole lot more to other people than they will to me. I don't need another 150. My goals are a little bit higher this year, so I'm not hunting. I have my guest that won the Lester's Feet raffle coming in Friday. So I don't want to put any pressure on that farm, and he's going to get the first crack at him. And I hope that one of the 4 shooters that are on my place walks in front of him next weekend. But people have asked me, "Well, go in and shoot a doe." Well, as soon as I go in and shoot a doe, they're going to run in and die in the sanctuary, the bedding area, and I'm going to tromp it all up. So I'm just staying away opening weekend for the first time, and I don't know how long.
I totally respect that, and I understand it. And one of the things that irritates me about the hunting industry is when I see somebody shoot a deer and say, he's a good TV buck. Well, what's a TV buck? That animal's life was sacrificed so you could have a TV show. I mean, I'm fine with outdoor TV and shooting deer on TV, but when people really lower their standards because of the situation they're in, that kind of irks me a little bit. And I totally respect that you're willing to sit out and give a better chance to the winner of Lester's Feet. And, hopefully he'll shoot one first evening out.
Yeah, and if he doesn't get a chance, it's not gonna be because of a lack of effort. Now, I did tell him he was supposed to be here this weekend. That was the deal, but he had a conflict and said, "Is there any way we can do it the following weekend?" Of course, this was in July, and I told him, I was like, "Dude, if you postpone it, I'm not staying away. If I got a shooter, I'm going after it." And I just, even though they're a mature buck, I'm going to do what I can to try to get something just a little bit bigger this year, both here and in Illinois. And, that 150-inch deer is going to mean a whole lot more to my son if he gets a crack at him or my guest next weekend than it will mean to me. I guess at the end of the day, I saw what finally caused me to make my mind up early in the week that I wasn't going to go after him. Somebody told me that old keys don't unlock new doors. And, I've put myself a lot of pressure over the years to get tagged out in Kentucky so I could focus on Illinois. Kentucky will be here late season, and if it happens late season, it doesn't. But, it's what we always talk about, set a goal and try to stick to it. And even if that means 2 years in a row I don't shoot a buck in Kentucky, so be it. I'm trying to manage this property, and we'll live with the outcome.
Well, some of the seasons that I learned the most was seasons I didn't tag a buck. So, I like that saying, old keys do not unlock new doors. I have to remember that one.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we ended up getting some fall food plots planted this weekend. I am completely done with food plots now. Here in Kentucky, my friend Patrick Simpson and I planted 2 new varieties of a test prototype plot that our buddy Dwayne Hopkins concocted. And we're testing out the first couple acres of that and got some Deadly Dozen planted in another spot. Did you get your spot replanted?
I did. I replanted it Friday, right before dark. Austin Razor, our buddy Austin and Ann from Ohio, who, is part of the Lester's Feet board of directors. Austin came up and helped me put some gutter drains in at my new house. And he left just in time for me to jump on the tractor Friday evening and replant those plots. And it's a good thing I got it done because I woke up Saturday morning, it was raining. And they got about an inch of rain on them yesterday, so I ought to be in good shape.
Yeah, it's perfect timing. We planted yesterday, and it rained last night. So we won't spend a lot of time on it, but, Austin came 2 weeks ago to my house, and we put gutter drains in and backyard drains and some catch basins. I don't envy the people that have to step in and out of ditches all day. That's hard work, and I'm out of shape. I picked the wrong project to do coming out of back surgery, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I told him he won't be doing that when he's over 55.
Well, he sits on the excavator. I was the one down in the ditch.
Oh, he climbed in the ditches here.
We were going
he must
right.
have felt sorry for me.
Yeah, we were going right behind him, laying the pipe as soon as he went in. But it's nice to have good friends. He was actually in town picking up a 360 hunting blind, I believe, and ended up just helping you. He runs equipment really, really well. He's a whole lot better on that machine than I could ever be. So
yeah. That's one of the great things about my consulting business is so many of these people become friends, and we work with them in different ways. And that's how I met Austin and Ann, and how they got involved with Lester's Feet. They became real world dealers. Just a great young couple, and just a long list of friends that I've made through the consulting business that end up becoming lifelong friends. But we also work with them in various ways. Chris Yates with Victory Chevrolet, that's how I met him. And just a bunch of great people I get to meet.
Yeah, Austin and Ann have turned into really good friends of ours. They were actually down at the house last night with my neighbors for a big cookout, and they came down for a couple hours, and they were kind of laughing at how you said you'd be sore the next day. And I said, I'm not laughing because I could barely move the next day. So speaking of that, you made a post on social media about moving your trail cameras from summer ranges to more winter rut places. So let's talk a little bit about that, the logic behind it, where to choose, when to move, and what the reasoning is before we move on to a special segment here in just a little bit.
Yeah, yesterday I actually went out in the rain. I put my rain gear on and moved some cameras from those summer feeding locations to the fall rutting locations. And it's just been a tradition of mine to do that on Labor Day weekend. And that's the time when the bachelor groups are starting to break up. Bucks are starting to shed velvet. I've had a few, random bucks show up on some of my cell cams in the past week or so that hadn't been there all summer, and I know those bucks are just moving towards their fall range or whatever. And I try to get those cameras in those locations before the move happens. So when that buck shows up for the first time, I get his picture. But, the experience yesterday, it really drove home a couple of points for me. And I think I checked 6 cameras yesterday. One of them had been there actually most of them had been there all summer and hadn't been checked yet. And one of them had 23,000 pictures, and they were almost all deer. And this was just in the corner, a little cove in a soybean field, kind of a corner where the deer really come out. The beans are just nipped down to about nothing in that corner. But that camera had been there since early July and had over 23,000 pictures. And I had another camera with 17,000 some odd pictures and another one with 18,000 some odd pictures. And just in feeding areas like that where the deer are really piling out. But here's something that really struck home. I tell people not to put their cameras out till the 1st of July because when you get a picture of a buck, it might be the only picture you get of him from that location because some bucks just don't like those cameras. Well, the 2 best bucks that I got on all those cameras I checked yesterday, one of them was on the camera that had the 23,000 pictures. He was there the very first day. And I had a series of about, 8 or 10 pictures of that deer. The rest of the summer, not a single picture of that buck. Not one picture all summer. He was there the first day and he was gone. He locked onto that camera and that was it. He was out of there and he never came past it again all summer. Now, if I'd have put that camera out the 1st of June and that happened and he had, 6-inch stubs out of his head, I would have had no idea how good that buck was going to be. But when I got his picture, he was super wide, 5x5 pinpointer, a little sticker off 1G2. I got a good look at that buck and what he's going to become, but I only got that one series of pictures. And then I had another camera, and I don't remember how many pictures was on that camera, but again, it was like first or second day that camera was there, boom, there's a giant mature buck. He was a 6x4. I only had 4 on one side, but he had 6 on the other. Definitely a big mature animal. It's a brand new property, never been to before. Broad daylight, I get his picture. I got his picture again 3 or 4 different times, but they was always late at night, not even at dusk or dawn. It was like midnight, 2 in the morning. I never got another daylight picture of that buck. And the point here is, when I share something with people, it's something that's not, I haven't just seen it one time. I've seen it time after time, year after year. And I'm telling you, you don't want to get them cameras out too early or you'll get your one picture and you're going to get it when the buck is not grown out enough to even see what he's going to become. One other thing that really was driven home to me yesterday, another new property I went to, I put 2 cameras up on this new property back in early July and never had stepped foot on that property before, but I got permission. I went in there and I put my cameras out on field edges. And all summer long, I've been studying this property, the aerials. I'm telling you, I've looked at this property for hours, the aerials of this property for hours on Google Earth, tried to zoom in on different areas, and just could not figure out where I needed to put my stand, if I was going to put a stand there, if there was a buck there that I wanted to hunt. Yesterday, I go in to check these cameras. I'm on my side-by-side my Ranger. It was raining, and I got a cat Ranger, so I was in that Ranger in the rain. The farmer had mowed a path between the field and the woods, so there was like a 20-foot wide mowed strip around the property. So I got on my side-by-side, went to check them cameras. I'm riding that edge around the field edge around the woods, and boom, instantly I knew exactly where I needed to put my stand. I've got a tree picked out and everything, and the whole ordeal probably took me less than 30 minutes. And I probably spent at least 3 hours studying that property this summer from aerials, and this spot did not jump out at me, but boots on the ground, boom, there it is. That's where I need to be. And I'm telling you, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Anybody that's charging anyone to mark aerials is ripping them off. They just don't pay somebody to mark an aerial photo of your property. You just cannot see. And yesterday, that point was just driven home on that one property.
Yeah, I think it's two great points, and we can even make even more. I mean, you talk about only getting one chance at a buck, and yet we've gotten in the habit of, using $60 trail cameras. You got one chance at it. You got to have something reliable, and there's no substitute for actually scouting it. And in this case, it's a new property. Normally, you're trying to do this and picking your spots out in January and February, but because of it being a new spot, it's you're figuring out where to hunt right now. So when you talk about taking cameras off summer areas and putting them on rut areas, are you talking about taking them off field edges, inside corners, and putting them on scrapes? Are you talking about inside funnels? What are we talking about? Where are we putting our cameras at right now?
Well, I should probably stress that I'm not moving every camera. There's some cameras that stay at the same spot from the time they go out the 1st of July until I pull them around the 1st of March.
Okay.
Well, I've recently posted some pictures of bucks on rope scrapes. Well, if that rope scrape is in an area where there's usually a bachelor group, I'll put that camera on that rope scrape early and just leave it there throughout the entire rut. But the ones that I'm moving are typically out on field edges, basically where the deer are coming out, into a soybean field. A lot of times it's an inside corner, and those are the ones that I'm moving them, and I'm moving them into basically funnel areas where those deer, when those bucks really start running during the rut, where they're funneled down and they typically pass through a confined, travel corridor. That's where I'm moving them to. And I want to get them there, like I said, before those bucks start running.
And that might be not only because of the time of the year and what the bucks are doing, but some of these areas, it won't be long, and the row crop farmers out in your area are going to be picking crops, and once that's barren fields, there's nothing going to be there.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense, especially for big ag country out where you're at. So now, did you go ahead and juice your rope scrapes while you were out there?
I did not, because of the rain. Actually, I did not move a camera to a rope scrape yesterday, and I've got some that are already on, and I've got some that I've got to move to rope scrapes. And when I do that, I'll definitely send them up.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's move on to our next segment. That's great information, but I'm excited to have a special guest that he's helped you even in past circumstances, hasn't he?
Yeah, we're talking about Ron Slifer, who helped me track my buck Trump back in 2017. So we don't have guests on here very often, but we got one tonight.
Well, I'm excited to pick his brain a little bit. We're going to cut away from this recording and pull up this recording we had with Ron earlier today, and hope everybody enjoys some advice that Ron gave us.
Folks, on this episode, we have a very special guest. We don't have guests on here very often. I think this is only the third time we've had a guest, and they've all been very special. We had Dr. Bronson Strickland, we had Dwayne Hopkins, and now we've got Mr. Ron Slifer, who is a deer tracker. He's got a bloodhound named Dio, and actually Ron and Dio tracked a buck for me back in 2017, a buck that I called Trump. And it's quite a long story, so I'll save it because I want to hear from Ron. Ron, how you doing this evening?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. Good to be here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Ron. It's I'm excited to have you on here. We're going to try to compress just a ton of information into a few minutes here on the podcast because I think it's so valuable for people to hear this as we prepare. And, some states like Kentucky just started this weekend. So you don't know this, but I've actually gotten to see Dio work. You had a pretty nasty injury a couple years back, and one of your buddies was running Dio, and a friend of mine shot a deer, and you, our mutual friend Kyle Harmon, got us in touch with you, and they sent Dio over. But very cool dog. I'm a dog guy, and when I see a great dog, as soon as this thing pulled up, and he's a huge dog, both feet up on the back of a toolbox with him looking up over the cab, just awesome. I love watching a good dog work, so I'm excited.
We're pretty blessed by him for sure.
So before we get started on some things about tracking animals with or without dogs, because I really want to spend most of our time together on that, and then you and Dawn can kind of get off on some soapboxes about how people choose the wrong tracker just like they choose the wrong land consultant, and I'll just turn it over to you, and I'll sit back and have a sip of Coke. But I claim on this podcast that I'm a recovering expandable broadhead user, and I quit using them. But it's not because of Don. It was actually watching your social media for a while and seeing different posts that you made, listening to the phone call when my friend called you and you asking the questions. I might have this a little out of context, but years ago I saw you post a picture from a local processor of the broken off arrows that were inside of deer in the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket, and all of them were expandable broadheads. And you made a very valid point about the lack of penetration with these things. Not biased to me or Don or what we've said, from a perspective of being a guy whose business is to track animals. What do you think about mechanical versus fixed blade broadheads from your perspective?
From my perspective and statistics of what I've actually seen out there the past 9 years of hunting, there is a higher failure rate with mechanical broadhead versus a fixed broadhead. You're relying upon that broadhead to open, and sometimes that doesn't happen. Or a blade might deflect. Arrow deflection with a mechanical broadhead tends to happen fairly frequently. Yeah, and I recall a track several years ago that really opened my eyes to it. Was a deer was standing perfectly broadside 20 yards out from the hunter. And we found the deer. We ended up recovering the deer, but when we found the arrow was hanging out the rear end of the deer, and it's like, how the heck did that happen? That arrow deflected, actually turned and did, a 90-degree turn inside the deer. It had to, it should have blew right through the deer, which it didn't. It turned and went towards the ass end of the deer. And I see that a lot. I see a lot of arrow deflection happening like that, and guys are losing deer because of it,
Yeah, it's Don and I talk about it, but we have to remember that everybody's archery setup is usually different, and we try to shoot a very stiff, heavy arrow with a fixed blade point. Some of these guys are shooting a very light arrow that doesn't have a heavy spline, and then a mechanical broadhead on the end of it. And when it hits that animal, just all of that kinetic energy just gets lost.
Yeah, it's rather disastrous. It really is. It's just a bad combination.
So when somebody calls you to say, "Hey, I need you to bring Dio to track them," is asking them what broadhead they use? Is that part of your kind of inquiry to see if it's even worth you taking the dog out?
Sure. It's one of the basic questions that I do have. I run down a list of about 15 questions, but that is one of the questions I like to know going into it. It kind of gives me some insight to possibly what we might getting into possibly.
So Don,
Ron, I know you get a lot of calls, and especially we start getting into November, and you might have 3 hunters call you in 15 minutes, and you got to make a decision on which track you're going to take up, or which one to take up first anyway. So does the broadhead choice weigh into that?
It does a little bit. Like I said, there's so many variables to that time of the year. It's going to be where I'm at logistically a lot of times, or the time since the shot, or how much they pursue the deer. But that's a small part of it, that question there of the broadhead type. Like I said, the calls in November is just, they come in so much, so frequently. It's really hard to keep them straight sometimes.
So, Don and I get these almost borderline hate mail things of people arguing with us or making, obviously there's a lot of courageous social media keyboard typists out there that, will say whatever they want, but they really disagree with us on this whole thing with, well, my mechanical broadhead opens up and has a 2.5-inch hole, and the blood trails are, crazy. You've been able to recover deer with very little blood, but Donna, you can say basically whether you agree, don't agree. You won't hurt Don and I's feelings. Our point is, if you shoot an animal, any shot that you kill a deer with a mechanical broadhead versus a fixed blade, the mechanical is just a set of risks or a set of variables that aren't needed to be taken.
Absolutely. And a deer can bleed a lot and still not die. You get these huge gaping open wounds on a deer sometimes. If you don't hit something vital, it's not going to kill a deer. You're going to have a massive blood trail, but it's not going to kill that deer every time. And I hear that too. These guys bragging about the massive amounts of bloods and stuff. Sometimes they do recover deer, but a lot of times they don't. I've been on these blood trails before where, a blind man can track the deer, so to speak, and we end up not finding the deer because it's basically a muscle type of wound, and it'll bleed profusely for a long time sometimes. Okay. But then it just peters out to nothing. So you've got a wounded deer. So, that false concept of having this large gaping wound in a deer, I think it gives a false promise to a lot of hunters sometimes, thinking that, hey, I can kill this deer because I can put this big wound in it. It's going to bleed to death. Well, not so. I mean, they can take a big wound like that and heal up. You've got to hit something vital, obviously, to kill the deer.
Well, for all those listeners out there that say I do nothing but drink Don's Kool-Aid, I can assure you that I don't like all of Don's Kool-Aid all the time. We don't agree on everything. But when it comes to expandable broadheads, I drank Ron Slifer and Dio's Kool-Aid, not Don Higgins's. So as we start this, before we move on to how we track animals, Ron, you have I enjoy your Facebook page, and especially the stories that you write about. You treat Dio as like a partner to you. He is your true partner to a business, to a hobby that you have. What is the best place for people to go out and watch this? Is it your personal Facebook page, or do you have something different for the tracking side?
No, just as far as my tracking side, Slifer's Bloodhound Service, they're on Facebook is my main source. That I kind of know I've got a captive audience, so to speak. A hunter's going to be sitting and stand bored, and I realize that. I used to hunt myself, and I know everybody's got a smartphone now, so they'll pull their phone out and scroll on their phone on Facebook. So that works really the best for me and getting my word out, and it's free advertising as well. I can really educate. Reach out to the hunter a lot, and entertain and educate them at the same time. Yeah, it works really well.
It's a great point. I think that these stories that you write about how deer are recovered or they're not recovered, what people did right and wrong, there's a lot to be learned, and I think that's the reason that you're writing similar to that.
Yeah, there's just so many variables to it. After the shot, it's just crazy, unreal that the variables that can happen.
Well, Don, do you mind if we move on? I think that's a good segue into the variables. Are you okay with moving on, Don, or do you have something else?
No, I could jump on a soapbox pretty easy, but I think we got more important things to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we can go on rants about expandable broadheads all day long, but I think I just wanted to kick off the first part of this segment with this. So, Ron, let's talk about these variables. Somebody shoots a deer. And, whether you're an experienced or a novice or beginner hunter, you basically have there might be more choices, but the way I look at it, you have three choices. You shoot, you either get down and you see the animal drop and go down and get to it. You get down, you look at your arrow. I know a lot of people say do that. And there might be four. There might be I stay in my tree stand for a period of time before I get down, or the people that get down and go the opposite direction, kind of like Don did with Trump. Walk us through when to do those four things, and what are kind of some things that the people that especially bow hunters need to watch for.
Okay. Obviously, it all happens in a split second, and it's hard to – sometimes your mind will play tricks on you, your eyes will play tricks on you, but obviously, knowing that shot placement is going to be key. You really have to know where you hit that deer at. And like I talked about earlier, sometimes there's the variable of arrow deflection. But anyway, if you know for sure where you hit that deer, if you hit it vitally, and you're sure of that, there's nothing wrong with getting down on the stand. Give it a couple hours just to be safe. Just to be safe at that point. But go check it out if it's a vitally hit deer. If you double lung it hard, whatever, they can still go a good ways. Don't get me wrong, but you could pursue that animal fairly quick. An unsure shot, there's nothing wrong with waiting. And a saying that I always said about that, a dead deer goes nowhere. We can agree 100% on that. And what I run into, a lot of hunters will call sometimes, and one of the questions is, I'll ask them, how long did you wait before you pursued the deer? And a lot of them will say an hour. I waited an hour and we went after it, and I went 150 yards and jumped a deer. That becomes a whole new issue now that you've jumped a deer. You didn't give the deer enough time to lay and die. So now you push that deer, and sometimes after they laid a little bit like that, they bleed. They won't bleed at all. So it's going to make it hard visually to track the deer. That's where the dog's going to come in at that point and play. But you just increase that blood trail tremendously and push that deer to who knows where. And then, of course, a shot you don't even know at all, period. Walk away from it, let it lay overnight. Let it lay overnight, go over all day long. Give that deer plenty of time, because an unsure shot, if you don't know, that's the worst thing to do is go in there and jump that deer, and that's a possibility you're going to do that. So, but if you got an arrow to read, like you said, smell the arrow. If it's obviously got the gut smell to it, you want to wait on that. You don't want to push that type of shot either. Gut shot deer can survive sometimes a day or two, sometimes depending on where you hit them at.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to let Don go first. So
you was cutting out there, Terry. I couldn't hear you very well.
I lost you too.
I said I got a couple questions, but I'm going to let Don go first if he's got any comments on the choices to make as a hunter after you shoot one.
Well, my main question, Ron, is at what point do you want the hunter to back away and call you?
If they give that deer a little bit of time, depending on the shot, and they're out there blood trailing, and they're still on blood, and they haven't kicked the deer up, and maybe found a wound bed or two along the way, but they're still blood trailing, and got blood. Fine, stay at a minimum. Stay off the blood trail. Don't walk on the blood trail. You can pick that scent up on your shoes and kind of lead a dog astray if we come out there later on. But do the best you can, at a minimum, just you and maybe another guy. Keep it down to a minimum. You don't need a whole army of guys that they're tromping around, tracking it up. And then once you come to that point of loss, give me a call. Let's talk about it, or give your tracker a call, confer, and sometimes there's property line issues we got to take care of ahead of time, before we get there. But always, when you come to that point of loss, mark it really well so we can find that spot again, and then, make your call to us. If you're a total loss, then at that point, give us a call. We can confer and figure out a time and availability and how to best take care of it from there.
All right. So my question is, Ron, from the dog side, is he smelling the blood or is he smelling something else off of that animal?
So a lot of guys don't realize this. When you shoot a deer, they'll secrete a hormone through their interdigital glands. And if deer is hit hard, they're going to secrete more of that hormone, okay? Stress hormone. If they're not hit as hard, they do secrete the hormone, but not as much. So a trained dog's going to pick up on that. A good seasoned dog knows what that smell is. That's why sometimes these coyotes get on deer so quick. Deer and coyotes can coexist, but the minute the deer gets hurt, coyotes know it and they go after them, So these dogs pick up on that wounded scent, but they're also smelling the scent of the deer. All the microscopic particles that come off the deer, they're picking everything up, analyzing it as they go, and they lock it into their brain and their nose, and they're tracking off a little bit of everything. But the main thing is on a wounded deer is that wounded smell that deer puts off is what the dog is keyed into. So that explains how that explains how we can go out 2 days later. We've done those 52-hour tracks. You got to think how many deer have crossed that deer's original path.
Right.
And we still find a deer 2 days later. He's picking up on that wounded scent.
So saying that you did mention that it is okay to go down and look at your arrow, smell it for guts, look at the blood on the arrow. Do I have bubbles? Do I have dark red liver? That's okay, but going into walking up on that arrow, based on what you just said about that hormone, we need to take a very specific path to the arrow, and then examine it, and if we're not sure, probably retreat back the exact same way I walked. We don't need to walk a bunch of circles around and then walk back the other way, because we could be putting and mixing up some of that scent around the impact site.
That's very true. You know, the cleaner it is for a dog out there, the easier it is. The quicker and easier it's going to be.
Well, that's,
you know, and like I said, you're dealing with the microscopic particles that you don't see, so you can be out there inadvertently, stomping around and leading dogs astray, or leading the dog astray possibly, and not know it. You know, it's that touchy, so to speak.
Gotcha. Well, it's really nice for me because I hunt in very close to where you live. So if I ever shot one and I wasn't sure about the shot, I got you programmed in my phone. Me and Don would call you and get you out there. But there's a lot of guys in different states. There's a lot of guys that listen to this in other parts of Illinois. Can you give our listeners a tip on how to find a good tracker versus somebody bringing their poodle? You know, I got a golden doodle that's got a great nose on him, but I wouldn't trust him to track my dog or track my deer. So how can, if somebody's worried about that shot and they've listened to you and they've backed out, they've been, they gave it time, they ran out of blood, they know, okay, now it's time to call in a dog. What choices do people have, or what resources do people have to say, here's somebody that knows what they're doing, not a person who's advertising with no credibility?
Great. You just hit a key thing here that we just started up this year. And again, it can be found on Facebook. It's called the IDTN, Illinois Deer Tracker Network. And what we've done here, there's a group of 10 guys that we're all UBT trackers. And we've formed this organization, basically what we've done, and formed a group of trackers. And what we've done, we've created this interactive map of Illinois. And you've got rated trackers. You've got a veteran tracker, and a tracker in training, and then a first-year tracker, and they're all color-coded. And you can go to this interactive map and click on a red dot, which is a veteran tracker. Click on that red dot in that area in Illinois. It'll have a little dot there who this guy is, and you can pull up this tracker's profile and get information from him. Same way with the other two trackers, the first-year tracker and the tracker in training. So what we've done, basically, is we've taken some of the homework out for the hunters, because there's been such an explosion of tracking dogs here the past few years, and I have no problem with that at all. That's great. But the problem of it is there's some people out there misrepresenting their skill level, over-bragging their dogs, and they're out there not doing the hunter justice at all, and they're kind of giving us a black eye. And sometimes they're charging the hunter a pretty good amount of money for a dog that's not worth it, So we're trying to protect the hunter by this interactive map. And it's also a way we can also reach out and inform hunters. It's going to be, if you go to that page, the Illinois Deer Trackers Network, there's a lot of informative stuff out there, questions that we answer a lot of times to a Q&A thing. But this also benefits trackers as well. We can network with one another a lot easier. I get to know more guys that are tracking this way. We can teach the younger guys some of the tricks of the trade. But it's more to benefit the hunter, the ease of ability that they can reach out and find a tracker, in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Don talks a lot on the podcast about how, whether it's the food plot business or the land consulting guys, there's always a bunch of guys out there overstating what their true credentials are. And I think this is going to be a great tool for people to get some tangible data. Is say, if I'm going to pay to bring a dog in and I got a net booner on the ground, I don't want somebody that's maybe going to be a trainee that's never done this before. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's a saying in the dog world, basically, the handlers and stuff, we say it, run your dog and not your mouth. Be leery of those guys that are out there bragging about their dogs, I mean, I'll say I'm blessed with a great, wonderful dog, but I'll never brag about my dog. And you guys all read about it. You see what he does and stuff. There's no need for me to say anything about him. He does his job, So, just be careful. You've got to watch. A lot of guys think they've got something they've really done.
Yeah. I think there's I'm scrolling through the Facebook page right now. Again, it's called Illinois Deer Tracker Network. A lot of stories about different deer that have been recovered. I think there's some maps, there's some wait time graphics, a lot of just different good information for guys as they're surfing Facebook. They can maybe learn a little bit about what to do. We talk all the time about how to set up for the perfect shot, but when that shot isn't perfect, here's some tips and advice on what to do.
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be a good thing. A lot of the neighboring states of Illinois have already done this. And like I said, we've done our homework with them and learned the do's and the don'ts. You know, and like I said, this is our first year up and going. Got high expectations, but I think it's definitely going to be very beneficial for a lot of people.
What do you think, Don?
Well, I just want to thank Ron for coming on. I really appreciate having someone like him locally. You always hope that you don't have to call in the dog, but you never know, just like when I shot Trump, when that's going to be needed. And I truly believe that if it wasn't for Ron and Dio, I probably would not have recovered Trump. He was still alive the next morning when we came in, and we jumped him 2 more times and decided to back out, and then found him the following morning, only 20 yards from where we had stopped on his trail. And Dio, I think, knew he was there. He was trying to pull Ron that direction.
Yeah, he was.
Well, I can't imagine.
Anyway, I did recover that deer because of Ron and Dio, and it's just it's nice to have someone like that local.
Yeah,
so I appreciate the opportunity on that, Don. I don't think I'll ever forget that day when Don called and he announced your name, and I said, "It's Trump." I think I immediately said, "It's Trump, isn't it?" Because I've been following you, and I knew it was. I knew that's what it was, you know. So the butterflies were flying in my stomach at that point, then.
Well, Ron,
you guys performed flawlessly.
Well, Ron, I can tell you are more of a man than me if you're going to lace up a long lead to that dog and have him run you through every briar patch and thorn bush and barbed wire fence in Illinois. Because once that dog, I've seen him, once he goes his nose down and it's time to work, I don't know that you could hold that dog back.
Honestly, no. I might be able to slow him down a little bit, but I can never really stop him. You know, I'm no anchor. I just slow him down a little bit, but I hold on tight and go for the ride, basically.
Well, Ron, if it's all right with you, I think what would be really cool is for the logo of this episode, we use that picture of you, Dio, and Trump, if you and Don are both okay with that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
And then what we'll do is we'll not only post a link to your new Facebook organization that you're part of, Illinois Deer Trackers Network, but then also a link to Slifer Bloodhound Service page, if that's all right with you. And,
that's totally awesome.
And I'm telling you, folks, no matter whether you're in West Virginia, Georgia, or in New York State, go follow Ron, because I'm telling you the stories and how he writes about him and Dio going out, and I call them adventures because really you don't know what you're getting into when you get there. And the lessons learned from this, every hunter can learn a lot from these stories. So we'll be happy to share that with you. Encourage everybody to go do it. Well, Don, unless you have something else, we'll move on to the next segment and thank Ron for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Ron. We definitely appreciate it.
Hey, I greatly appreciate it myself. Thank you.
All right, well, that was a pretty good segment from Ron. I got to admit, that dog Dio, like I said, I'm a dog guy. It's so cool to see dogs work like that. Pretty impressive animal.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dio's not the only animal in the team. That Ron's an animal himself. I seen him in action, and that guy, I don't know how many, we forgot to ask him how many tracks he does in a year, but I think it's over 100, isn't it?
Well, he does. I think he actually, I don't know if he saves all of his vacation time. We were trying to move pretty quick, and I didn't get to ask him everything I wanted, but I think he still has a full-time job, and like he'll track deer in the middle of the night and then go to work the next morning and then come back at night again and track deer. And I know he takes a lot of time off, especially during Illinois gun season, because it seems like he's chasing a lot of them then.
And a lot of them aren't easy tracks. It's not like he pulls his dog out of the back of the truck and they walk 100 yards and there's your deer. Sometimes it's hours and hours long and miles long, and through the thickest, nastiest stuff a deer could walk through and crawl through. And I'll tell you what, Ron's an animal just as much as Dio is.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Well, we hope that everybody goes and looks and follows both of those two Facebook pages we plugged earlier. We'll make sure, especially for our listeners that listen on YouTube, we'll put that in the link below. Real quick before we move on to Don's best and worst segment of the week, I do have an update about Lester's feet that I wanted to spend a couple minutes on. There is a little girl, 8 years old, from outside the east, about 35, 40 minutes east of Kansas City, Missouri, that we learned about earlier this week from a listener to this podcast. And it was kind of a heartfelt message that I got from a young man who said, I really want to help, and I don't really necessarily have funds right now, but this situation is heavy on my heart. Can you see if you can help this family? So I started doing a little bit of research and found Lindsay, this little 8-year-old. And the short story is Lindsay was diagnosed with kidney cancer. Single mom. I don't think dad is in the picture, but the mom had to quit work and on FMLA, and was just really struggling trying to balance taking care of her sick kiddo and her 2 older boys and not being able to work. So Lester's Feet got involved this week, and we found out some information, and it was one of the most rewarding phone calls I've ever had when I called that lady and said, don't worry about your car payment anymore. We paid your car off.
Well, that was just fantastic. I shared it on my Facebook. Actually, I kind of copied your post and personalized it on my page a little bit. And, it just, when you got kids of your own and you see, and they're healthy, and then you see what these other families go through, it just pulls on your heart.
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't a real expensive car, so people don't think that we went out and bought her a new Cadillac or something like that. But she had a car payment that she was struggling to meet, and instead of just, paying a couple car payments to limp her through, we looked at the balance and the loan and the interest rate and everything. We just said, let's just go ahead and knock that one off for her. But what was really cool is Lindsay actually gets treatments every Tuesday at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, which is really close to one of the sponsors of the podcast, Victory Chevrolet. So one of my fears was I kind of talked to some other people around the circle, and they said, this car isn't in that great a shape. They saw her driving with a donut tire on it. Well, for me to call a mechanic in Kansas City and say, I want you to look at this lady's car, I guess I'm just too big of a pessimist. I always think somebody might be taking advantage of me, right? So I called Chris, and I was like, how close are you to Children's Mercy in Kansas City? He goes, oh, we're just right up the road. So the board of Lester's Feet's intention was say, is there any way that you could go pick this vehicle up with your service department while she's getting treatment one day, and go and put new tires on it, check the brakes, alignment, make sure that it's reliable, because this is the vehicle that she's having to use to take her kid to treatments every week. Chris, the guy that he is, folks, if there's another reason to do business with Chris Yates, he says, I'm on it, get me the information. He wanted the VIN number, he wanted the list of what the car needed, and he's not even letting Lester's Feet pay for it. He doesn't necessarily want this known. This is another way that he's stepping up and believes in this organization and doing good for others. And Chris's dealership is going to pick this car up from this lady after they go in the hospital, bring it up to his dealership, and they're going through it to make sure that it's reliable. So at the end of the day, all of you who listen to the podcast that pray or support Lester's Feet financially, here's just another example of how we're stepping in and kind of making some loose ends go away and let these moms, families take care of their sick kids. So just a special opportunity, and there's nobody here to thank outside of the listeners who contributed to the Lester's Feet organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to everyone that supported it.
All right, so with that, let's move on. What's your best and worst of this week? I got a feeling that with what was in the media this week, you might have a good one. I'm just guessing, though. I don't know what you've chosen.
Well,
I got a feeling.
I probably don't have what you're thinking, but I've got a best and worst, all right. And I want to start with the worst,
okay,
because I want to spend more time on the best.
Right.
the worst is from social media. It kind of definitely rubbed me the wrong way. So, a lot of you are friends with me on Facebook, and you probably noticed in the past few months that I've got one friend who's a liberal, and it's a lady that I used to work with, and I'm good friends with her. I think the world of her. She was just fantastic when we worked together years ago. Joked around with her every day, but for whatever reason, she is a diehard liberal Democrat. And she posted something this week that just had me ready to call her up and chew her out. But she posted this thing on abortion, and basically her post was bashing men and specifically white men. The post said that basically the reason men are against abortion, the reason white men are against abortion is they want to keep their women under their thumbs doing what they say. And it made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And
it's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
It was just absolutely ludicrous. I was ready to start screaming. The truth of the matter is Planned Parenthood, who does most of the abortions in this country, was founded by a white woman to control the black population, and more black babies are aborted than white babies. In fact, I don't know where she gets these ridiculous ideas. I'm against any baby being aborted. I don't care if it's black, white, brown, or purple. We shouldn't be killing babies, and to blame it on white men and to say that the whole reason for abortion is so that white men can keep their women under their thumb is just beyond belief to me. So
another example.
I'm just going to leave that one alone because I can get really fired up on that one. But I want to focus on the best that I've seen this week. And this really does not come from the news. It does not come from social media. But a lot of you know, and I've mentioned it, that we're building a new home. And in the process, we've had a lot of different contractors here, a lot of family businesses, that have contracting businesses of different sorts have been here. And I've seen a couple of different examples of sons working with their fathers in these businesses. And, everything that we've done with this house, we've had to wait for people to show up. We've had to wait for supplies. We've had to wait. I did everything in my power to have this house done and moved in by the 1st of September so that come hunting season, I'm not dealing with it. And I can tell you that's not going to happen. We're going to be lucky to be in by Christmas. But the positive that I see here, and I hope there's a lot of young guys listening to this podcast and taking this to heart. I'm 58 years old, and I don't think in my lifetime I have ever seen a better time for someone to start a business. Now, my own story that I've shared, a time or two in the past, when I got out of high school, the last thing I was ever going to do was go to college. I hated school, and I wasn't about to pay somebody for more of that torture. So I went and got a job at a local factory, and it paid decent, but I was never going to really get ahead in life working there. And 19 years ago, I got out of that factory and started my own business. I started 2 or 3 cents and sold one of them. I'm telling you, the advice that I gave my own daughters was that if you really want to make good money in life, you got to work for yourself. And for the most part, I know there's people like you, Terry, that have great paying jobs that you love. But for most people, they're going to hate their job and they're never going to make enough money to really get ahead. Now, they're going to make enough money to buy nice things and make payments on them and all that. But I have never seen a better time in my entire life to start a business. Back when I was young, if you'd start a business and hang your sign out, you'd be sitting there waiting who knows how long for the phone to ring for the first customer. But this is just a time that anybody with ambition needs to take a chance and start a business of some sort. You can open a store of some kind. You can, provide some sort of service or something. But seeing those contractors work around this house and getting to work with Austin Razor a couple of days here, putting in those drains, it just really hit home that this is an opportunity for people to really get ahead in life. And I told Austin, with as smart as as him and Ann are, and the talents they have, they should be retired at 50 as millionaires. And folks, I know there's a lot of young guys listening. Again, this is an opportunity. The world is in a mess right now, but it's an opportunity. And I just encourage any listener that has some ambition to try to start a business right now, because the competition is just swamped with work. There's enough work for you too.
As a business person, listening to what you talk about, I've got a master's degree and I don't regret anything I've ever done. But if my kids were wanting to get into a trade instead of go to college, I would support it 100%, because I think you're absolutely right. No matter where we turn right now, there's a lack of labor. I don't know why all of a sudden I think there's just a big population that's decided I'm going to get my free check from the government. And, because we didn't have this problem 3 years ago, as bad as what it is. Now, all of a sudden we come out of COVID and now nobody can find employees. Well, where'd they go? Well, they're sitting on their home eating Cheetos, I guess. No matter where we turn, people are looking for workers. Getting HVAC, electricians, plumbers. It doesn't matter what it is. If you do something and you're willing to work, I agree with Don with you 100%. Not only can you have a job doing it, but the money that you can make is phenomenal. We are so dependent on things, just this entitlement feature that's been raised in these younger generations. If you're young and you want to work, you just set yourself apart from 90% of the people in your age class. So I think that's a great analogy. My family was custom home builders growing up. My grandfather had Pier Construction, and it wasn't something that myself, my cousins, anybody got into, and that company's been liquidated now. But I can sure appreciate the guys, because working with family sometimes isn't easy either, but it's special to see guys that are willing to work with their dad and spend that kind of time together and kind of carry on a family business. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. The issue with the country right now is you got half the people are a bunch of deadbeats living off the government, and the other half is just flat out working their butts off. Now, the half that's working their butts off is making good money. There's no doubt about it. And the free handouts are not going to be there forever. So this is really an opportunity for the person with some ambition to take themselves and their family, to a new level as far as wealth.
Yeah, I agree. All right, with that, why don't we move on to the buyfarm.com property of the week.
Buyafarm.com is your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. Now, here is Don Higgins with this week's featured property.
Okay, this week's featured property is 217 acres in Franklin County, Illinois. It's located just 1 mile east of Ziegler, Illinois. There's 115 acres tillable, and 102 acres is wooded, so it's almost a good even 50-50 divide. It's a very secluded property. It'd be great for a deer or turkey hunter, or even a home builder that wants to get away from neighbors and be more secluded. The timber on the property was cut a few years ago, so there's good bedding and browse for the deer. And then, in fact, there's an abundance of deer and turkey on the farm right now. Taxes are cheap, only about $6 an acre, and there's a lot of photos on the Buy a Farm website. So you got to check out the 217 acres in Franklin County. If you're interested, you can call Agent Wayne Keller, and Wayne's phone number is 618-407-1679.
It sounds like an awesome property. Franklin County, Illinois. Go to buyfarm.com. Ton of pictures up there. Low taxes, could be a really cool property to start from scratch on, couldn't it?
For sure.
All right. Well, we thank buyfarm.com for their support of the podcast, and encourage each of you to go out and follow their social media, buyfarm.com, and visit their webpage. So, I got a quick story to tell you, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So we keep talking about Ann and Austin, they were down here last night cooking out, and they're listening to the podcast right now, and they're probably sitting there looking at each other going, oh no, where's it going to be? Or where's he going with this? And we were talking about how you sometimes when you're driving, or that you could get in a truck and you could drive to western Iowa and just not even say a word and not talk, but you get you on the right topic and we'll just keep going. And Austin goes, I didn't know whether to bring up politics or whatever. And our other friend Patrick Simpson goes, well, when I talk to Don, he goes, we have no problem talking for hours and hours and hours. He said, oh yeah, we just go straight to politics. We'll get all of it hashed out. So your ears were probably burning last night at the neighborhood cookout. So I just wanted you to know that. So hopefully Ann and Austin are laughing, but that was kind of funny.
I had a good time with Austin here. He's a hard worker, and I think I put a few ideas in his head too. So who knows what he may be doing here in a couple of years.
Yep. So he's getting into the food plot and habitat business. So if you're in Southeast Ohio or the inside of Cincinnati, we can put you in touch with him to get food plots and habitat work done for you for sure. So with that, I don't think we're going to have time for 3 questions tonight since we did the guest episode with Ron. So do you got 2 questions that you can tee up for us tonight?
I've got 2, and if we only have time for 1, we can do 1. But
yeah, I think we'll be all right. Let's see how the first one goes.
All right. First one is from Neil Putnam from Lanesburg, Michigan. Neil says, I want to start off by saying your podcast is a breath of fresh air. I like how you tell it like it is and not worried who may be offended. I think your following speaks for itself. Secondly, I like how you mix your faith in with your podcast. Like other listeners, you have also rejuvenated my faith, and I am once again aware of my conduct and my train of thoughts. I think you and Terry have a great thing going, and please keep the podcast going. My question is, how do you fit in time for practice shooting? Also, what is your regiment to help yourself stay in control on the shot at a world-class deer? How many arrows do you shoot per day or week? Once again, keep up the podcast. Good luck with all that you and Terry set out to do. I hope to shake your hand someday. Thank you for sparking my faith. Well, Neil, you would be shocked. I'll tell you what I do is I keep it simple. Terry will tell you, most of the equipment I got that I use that I carry to the woods is 20 years old or older. I don't change. When I find something that works, I stick with it. I can pick my bow up right now, and I'll be 100% honest. I have not shot my bow since last season, but I guarantee you I can pick it up, and I can hit the bullseye at 20 yards, which is what I set my shots up for. I will start shooting it here real quick. In fact, I plan to start this week. And when I do, I'll shoot it probably every other day, maybe, I don't know, not that much, 20 arrows every other day until season. And then when season opens, I'll continue to shoot maybe, a handful of arrows a week at the target. But a lot of times on my hunts, especially the morning hunts, I don't like to do this much in the afternoon hunts, but the morning hunt before I get down from my stand, I will, pick out a hedge apple or something, and I'll shoot one practice arrow out of my stand. Don't like to do that in the evening hunt. I don't want an arrow sticking in the ground and a deer come and smell it and spook. But I'll do that on the morning hunts. Sometimes walking into a stand, I might take a couple of practice shots with that arrow at, a hedge apple or whatever I see. But I don't shoot a lot, to be honest, but I don't change my equipment a lot either. So I think that's the key, getting the equipment you're comfortable with. I've never shot an arrow through a chronograph. I don't worry about speed. All I worry about is putting that broadhead where I want it at 20 yards. And if I can do that, then I can kill a deer.
I agree. I probably shoot a little bit more. I probably shoot a little bit more than you, but not much. I'm not one of these guys that go and there's nothing wrong with shooting a lot. I just don't. But at the same time, everybody has to also realize that the way Don is setting up his properties in his shot, you don't have a long shot. Everything's pretty much a chippy anyway. So I want to circle back to what he was talking about the rejuvenated of Neil's faith. I want everybody out there to realize that Don and I are far from perfect, and we struggle a lot sometimes, but I think that as far as this podcast, it's probably been a better influence on Don and I's faith as much as it is the listeners. Because if anything that this has taught me is, no matter who is listening to you, and that could be all of the hundreds of thousands of people who have listened to this podcast, or it could be 5 people in the break room at work, your actions and what you say and how you conduct yourself makes a difference to people. And it's amazing how many messages that Don and I get about how people, reconnected, or they started thinking, or, they just started putting priorities in their right. And all we do is get on here and vent about expandable broadheads and liberals. And, it goes to show, it's put in perspective to me that it doesn't matter how big or how small of an audience, somebody's always listening and watching. And I think it's done just as much for me as it has, other people that have listened to this thing. I really do mean that. So we appreciate it, Neil. We struggled just like everybody else.
No doubt about it. Don't look to me as an example to follow. Look to Christ. I set a poor example very often. I try to do better, but we're all sinners. We're all going to fall short. And I just appreciate the comments like yours, Neil. And we get them pretty frequently. I'm a handful of them every week for sure. And the fact that somebody would even look up to me and care about what I say still just blows my mind. And I just can't believe it.
As ornery as we are, the fact that we're somebody's spiritual mentor is scary in itself. But it just goes to show, I didn't intend to bring this up, but there was in church this morning, there was a new song that the praise team introduced, and I jotted down on my phone a lyric from the chorus of that song, and it says, "The cross is all the confidence I need. Your love will never give up on me." And I just thought, how cool is that no matter what's going on, if we're confident in the salvation of Christ, that's all that matters. He's never going to give up, no matter how ornery Don and I ever get, the confidence that we have in Christ. And we appreciate the people that support us making that part of this podcast. We definitely don't want to hide away from that. So, all right, let's move on to the next question.
Next one comes from Dan Hageman from Oak Forest, Illinois. Dan says, in early midsummer, my southern Wisconsin river bottoms cameras often get daytime videos of deer that have hundreds of flies on them. This past June was particularly bad. Based off of deer behavior in the videos, the flies seem to be a significant stressor or irritation. Do you think flies can stress deer enough to affect their physical health? If so, is there anything that landowners can do to reduce the stress on the herd? What are your thoughts on setting up a cattle-type back rub fly control system over a pinch point in a travel corridor? Is there an insecticide that's safe for deer? I understand they might not like the insecticide smell, but maybe they'll eventually learn they can find relief from flies there. Thoughts? Thank you. Well, Dan, this is going to sound like an infomercial, and it kind of is. I raise all-natural grass-fed beef, and as such, I don't use any chemical fly control or any chemical wormers on those cattle. But I tried something a few years ago when we first came out with the Maximizer Deer Mineral with the Expect Healthy Deer technology. I started giving that to my cattle, and magically the flies on them just disappeared. And I use it to this day. And in fact, I can tell when my mineral feeder it needs replenished with mineral because the cows start getting flies on them. And I'll replenish that feeder, and within a few days, they'll come up to the water tank and have very few flies. Now, I'm not going to tell you there's zero, but I mean very few. You could probably count on one hand how many flies are around the entire herd when they come up. And the issue with using it for whitetails is they need to consume enough of it for it to have an effect. I think that's the reason that it helps with EHD is it keeps the midge gnats away. But again, the key is you got to get those deer to consume it on a regular basis and consume enough of it to have an effect. And that means a lot of different mineral licks, and also if you can supplemental feed and use the feed that has the Expect Healthy Deer technology in it as well. That's just two modes of ways to get it into the animal. So there is something you can do. As far as using a cattle type of back rub or something like that, my guess is that the deer are going to want nothing to do with that. They're going to smell it and probably just have nothing to do with it, especially a mature buck. So I don't think that's an option.
Yeah, Dan, I think Dan, you said he's from Illinois, so supplemental feeding isn't available for him, but for other states, that's definitely an option. You know, I actually want, if you're all right with it, Don, and we'll kind of tee up what's happening here this coming week, I want to tee up his question is, do you think that flies and the stress from flies can affect the physical health of an animal, or maybe even affect antler growth? And maybe you can introduce what's happening here this coming week, and that might be a good question to table till then.
Yeah, you led me right into it, Terry. This week, Terry and I are going to be interviewing Dr. Bronson Strickland again. He's going to be on the next podcast if everything goes according to plan. Unless somebody has to cancel, the next podcast will be an interview with Dr. Strickland. And we got some pretty big news to announce. We're going to wait till he's on to do it. But if you've got questions that you would like Dr. Strickland to answer, fire them off. Go to the ChasingGiants.com website. Don't send them to me in an email. Go to the ChasingGiants.com website and fill out the form there. And I'll pick 2 or 3 of those to fire off to Dr. Strickland, and maybe this is one of them that we start with.
Yeah, I'll tell Dan I will make it a point that we ask that question to start with, because I think that's a fascinating topic about how either insects, ticks, flies, any of those peripherals, what kind of stress is that actually adding to whitetail, especially during the heat of the summer? You know, there's a lot of hardships that go on a deer's life, whether it be the dead of winter or the heat of the summer. And dealing with those, what does stress do for overall herd health or for antler growth? I think that's a fascinating question that we'll make sure we work into the next episode.
Sounds good. What do you got going on this week, Terry?
Well, I'm going to, tomorrow we're going to work in the yard a little bit. I'm going to feed, put some more, you teed me up for the complete feed with the Expect Healthy Deer technology. I keep that out the entire year, except when we're not allowed to put it out for turkey season. I have to pull them for about a month and a half or so every year. But I'm going to fill the feeders tomorrow, then glass, and I'll be glassing, trying to get a leg up on where one of these velvet bucks on my property is bedding, so that my guest coming in to hunt Friday night gets a shot at one. I'm in prep mode.
Well, hopefully you guys get her done. Yeah. I'm actually headed to Iowa to hang some stands tomorrow.
Okay.
I've got a storyline going in Iowa. I'm just going to throw out that little teaser that if it plays out like it's looking like now, it'll be very interesting. Just leave it at that. No. And I have not found a giant, but I have got pictures of some better bucks in the past week. They're starting to move around a little bit more. We talked about the bachelor groups breaking up, so I'm going to hang some stands in Iowa tomorrow with West Elks and my son-in-law, Corey Hamilton.
Yep. All right. Well, we can look forward to hearing from that. And the next time that everybody hears us, we're going to be on the phone with Dr. Bronson Strickland on the next episode. So don't wait over the next day or two, because we're going to record this episode early or midweek. So don't wait till Friday to submit a question, because we're not going to be recording next Sunday. We'll air it next Sunday night, Monday morning. So make sure you go to ChasingGiants.com, go to the podcast tab, and scroll down and submit a question on there. So without further ado, or I guess if everybody were running a little bit late tonight, we want to make sure that everybody has a blessed week. Be safe, and Don's going to take us out with our sponsors.
We want to thank BuyAFarm.com, Victory Chevrolet, Lone Wolf, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, 360 Hunting Blinds, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Vortex Optics, and Vengeance Camo. Hope everyone has a happy Labor Day.